What's going on, guys? Coach Bobo here, and today we're talking about hand wraps. Most common question I get in the gym is, how do I wrap my hands? Well, I'm going to show you two different ways to do that today. But first, we're going to talk about the actual hand wraps. I'm going to be using a Combat Corner 180-inch semi-elastic. You're going to come across a bunch of different things in brand, materials, length, and so on. To my knowledge, there is no bad brand or material. I just have what I prefer. Combat Corner, Title, Venom, all the big major brands are going to have hand wraps. You'll even find gyms with their custom logos on their hand wraps. Now, my preferred is going to be the 180-inch semi-elastic. I also like the 200-inch a lot. I'm going to be using the 180 again today. Talking about the different materials, the non-elastic obviously is not going to stretch. I don't care for that one too much. I tend to wrap my hands too tightly and they don't tend to loosen up much. Or if I don't wrap them tight enough, they will tend to loosen up more than I care for them to. So I typically use the semi-elastic. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the fully elastic I don't care for because they are usually too stretchy and I find myself wrapping too tightly and cutting off circulation. So the semi-elastic I feel is the perfect in between. The different lengths that you'll find are going to be the 108-inch, the 120-inch, the 180, and the rare 200. The 108 I would say is usually for kids. I don't recommend them for adults at all as they're usually too short. Even the 120 is relatively short. The 180 is the preferred and probably the most common if you can find it. Sometimes the stores tend to sell out. So 180 inch is going to be your best bet as far as being able to fit whether you have a skinny wrist, a larger wrist, or whichever style you're going to find yourself wrapping with. The other one you might happen to run across is going to be the Mexican hand wraps. They have a bit more of a gauzy material. They are pretty stretchy. To my knowledge, not all of them have Velcro and or thumb loops. So again, right now I'm using Combat Corner 180-inch semi-elastic, and I'm about to show you two different ways to wrap. Let's go. First things first, let's unroll this hand wrap. Some guys like to roll from the wrap being rolled up. I like to unroll the whole thing and wrap it up from there. It's gonna be a bit of a weird angle for me as I've never wrapped with the camera sitting in front of me, but I wanted you to get the best view and being able to see and or follow along with me as I do this. So the first wrap is what I call a quick wrap. I'm going to take my thumb loop and put it around my thumb. Most wraps will be marked with this side up or this side down, in this case this side up. If you happen to get flipped over when you get to the end, and I'll show you what I mean, I'm going to show you a way to fix that as well. So let's get started. So starting with the loop first around my thumb, I'm going to come down and I'm going to wrap around my wrist about 3 times. 2, 3, and now from here I'm going to go up over the back of my hand to wrap the knuckles. In wrapping the knuckles, I'm going to go ahead and keep my fingers nice and open. I'm not going to put too much tension in them, but I do want to keep them open so I don't accidentally make it too tight and cutting off circulation. And that's about 4 times there. So now from here, coming out from my thumb and my index, I'm going to come back down across the back of my wrist, creating a nice little X there, which is going to help me keep my wrist balanced when punching. In wrapping your hands, you also want to make sure that your wrist stays nice and straight. Don't wrap with your hand bent or it's going to stay bent, and we don't want that. So now from here, making my X, I'm coming back around my wrist, where I'll wrap my wrist one more time. From here, I'm going to go up and around my thumb, coming back down, and then around the back of my wrist again. Now, coming out from underneath my wrist, I'm going to weave between my fingers, and this weave is going to help make sure that this padding here, when I'm taking my gloves on and off, if I need to grab water or whatever, is not going to come sliding off for me. Just one, starting from the pinky, coming back down underneath the wrist. Now I'm going to go up between the index and the middle finger, coming out between the index and the thumb, back down over the back of the wrist, coming out from under the wrist, up and between the middle and ring finger, back out between the index and the thumb, back over the back of the wrist, and then from here, I'm just going to finish off with a nice tight little finish. Now, if you find yourself, you accidentally flip this guy over and the Velcro is facing down, and now all of a sudden I can't do it. Do not, I repeat, do not undo your entire wrist to fix it. All you have to do is go back into when you're wrapping around your wrist, flip it over, and once you do, you'll be good to go. Right? I can't stress how many times I've seen people unwrap their entire wrist just to fix that one little mistake. Now the last thing you're going to do is if you flip your hand over, you have a little bit of space between your palm and all this extra material here, and you're just going to take that and tuck that up underneath itself to give yourself a nice little handle to hang on to when you're punching. So your pad is here and you're good to go. Hand wrap number 2. So taking my wrap, I'm actually going to take where this knot is stitched together and I'm going to fold it over. So the thumb loop is actually going to be in the palm of my hand. And I'm going to hold that little bit down with my pinky and I'm going to wrap around my knuckles. I can move my pinky because the wrap is holding itself. I'm going to wrap this about 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want to try to keep this in as line as possible so it's not a bunch of splatter all over the place. It's one nice little thick little cushion. From here, I'm going to slide it off my hands. Now I have my padding here. Okay. Now I'm going to lay that padding across the top of my knuckles, holding it in place using my thumb. And I'm going to take the wrap underneath my palm. I'm going to wrap one around the front so it can't slide too far forward. If you need to adjust to make sure it stays over the knuckles, you can do so then. And then one more to hold it from sliding back. Okay, and now from here, very similar to how we did the other hand wrap, keeping that in place. It came out from there. I'm going to go down around the back of my wrist. I'm going to wrap once, right, keeping my fingers open to make it not too tight. Up over my thumb, coming back down. One more time around my wrist to keep it in place, and then from here, similar to how I did my wrap earlier, I'm going to start between the fingers. Now when I do this one, I want to make a quick little fist here to make sure that my padding is sitting over the knuckles that I want it to. And as I bring my wrap up and over, I'm going to keep that fist not too tight and open up to bring it between my ring and my index finger. Coming out between my index and my thumb, back behind the wrist, underneath, coming out between the index and the middle, index and thumb, back over the wrist, coming out underneath, and then the last one between the middle and the ring finger. Coming out between index and the thumb, back over the wrist, and now the rest will be used for my wrist. And here I like to go a little bit further down there to give it a little bit of extra support there. And now again, I have this little opening here with some extra fabric, and I'm just going to stuff that underneath to give myself a nice little pole to hang on to, and I should have this nice little cushion. And if you need to, there's an opening right here. Sometimes I'll double check, pushing that cushion into place, making sure it's right where I want it. Well, I hope that was helpful. First one is what I call the quick wrap. The second one, you can call it the fighter's wrap, cushion wrap, whatever you want to call it. A couple things to keep in mind. Don't wrap too tight because you don't want to cut off circulation. Don't wrap too loose because then you won't get the support you need. Again, you don't have to wrap exactly this way. Any kind of variation off of this is going to help. The main parts that you want to focus on are going to be getting a small pad for your knuckles to protect your knuckles, and a bit on the wrist to protect from bending the wrist too far too much, giving a nice little firm support for you. Also remember, how many times you wrap in each area is going to be completely dependent on you and the size of your wrist to your liking. This is not going to happen on the first try. It's not going to be your favorite on the first try. Keep trying, change it up little by little until you're happy with it and until you get it to your liking and satisfaction. Again, I hope this was helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Have fun.